All right, how's it going out there, folks? Welcome back here to a Sunday, about 10:18 a.m. California time here. December 22nd, 2024 is the date. Latest activity shows a little one-pointer out there in California, also a three-pointer in the red flag around the Mediterranean region there, it looks like. Alaska area seeing a little bit of movement overnight as well following yesterday's events. There started off with a 5.6. That earthquake yesterday originally coming in as a 5.9. We've had a couple other aftershocks in here as well, including a 5.3. That earthquake in itself was coming in as a 5.7 this morning. So quite a bit of downgrading going on here with the Alaska earthquake activity. Not for sure why. Maybe there's limited amount of seismograph stations around the area. But definitely seeing a little bit of an uptick here across the Alaska area. The Aleutian Trench, that is a major subduction zone area. And if you look here on the map, accumulated average slip rate here on the east side of the Aleutian Trench runs about 60 mm per year and more as you transverse here to the west, where the plates tend to subduct at a more defined level, dynamically subducting right there across the area. So higher slip rate across the Coral Kamchatka. These are just on average 60 mm per year where we're seeing the earthquake activity right now. Potentially this region right here is overdue for some larger activity. I pulled up the historical data here, 6.5 and above, since records have been kept. And, it's, when was it? 2021, we had an 8-pointer out here. That was right here, a little bit further west than the current activity. Our current ongoing activity is happening right about here in this region. I'll bring up another model and show you guys the data here. Just outside of the Kodiak area to the southwest. This earthquake, relatively shallow as well, about 7 miles or so below the surface. But this region specifically is in somewhat of a gap area in terms of larger activity, and more so back across this region as well. There's the 8-pointer. Again, that was further west here along the subduction zone than the activity we're seeing today. If we zoom into this little area of interest where the ongoing activity is happening, it looks like 2001 was our last 6.9 earthquake. So we could be, could be somewhat overdue. You have to look back here at intervals. Prior to that, it was 1986, 1957. Well, these got to go largest magnitudes here. Hold on a second. 2001, 1986. There was a couple back in 1986, 1978. Maybe about 10 to 15 year intervals, it looks like. 1964. So, we could be overdue. I mean, if you think about it, 2001, the last decent size earthquake up here in this area. Again, this is 6.5 and above. We may have had 6s in here, but as far as larger scale potential and movement, looks like we're could be overdue here. 1999, a 7-pointer. But the Aleutian Trench obviously is a super lengthy subduction zone. No stranger to large earthquakes. You guys remember the Alaska earthquake here in 1964, the Prince William Sound earthquake and the tsunami that was produced up there from that 9.2 back in 1964. That was, ways over here into this area, and I mean, it's very possible, again, we could be seeing another 8-pointer, maybe even a 9-pointer out here across the area. The Aleutian Trench definitely stirs up some big-time earthquakes. Speaking of earthquakes here, for the yearly average, right, this is just the number of earthquakes occurring each year globally on average, right? Of course, the bigger earthquakes don't happen as common as the smaller ones, and that's probably a good thing. Could you imagine over 1 million 8.0 earthquakes? Yeah, I think this world would look a lot different. So on average, I always talk about how we're expecting an 8-pointer here anytime because we should have seen one by now. And the last 8-pointer was back in 2021 here we are almost 2025. So this is on average. If we don't see one every year, we should at least see one every other year. And we've gone beyond that window. So things are looking likely that we'll see something M8.0 or above here soon. On average, 15 7.0 to 7.9 earthquakes. That's pretty decent, right? Let's take a look how this year has compared. Right, so let's go over here to the layout here that I've already pre-assembled. This is the last year here up until January 1st, 2024 to today's date. We still have a few days left, right? So anything could happen in those 7 days, but 7 or more than that. But here's what we got. Let's go ahead and count them here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we got 10 earthquakes of 7.0 and above. So that's a little bit below average here in terms of the average number of these large events each year. But again, we still have a little bit of time left, so anything can happen at any given time. And I'm not going to count the M6s there. That's 130. So, and as you can see, it goes up as the magnitude goes down. The Earth is a very active planet. Plate tectonics can stir up a lot of earthquakes. So if you're hearing about a lot of earthquakes recently, that's just because, well, I mean, there has been quite a few earthquakes. But a lot of times the activity is coming from pages that normally don't cover earthquakes. So that's why you're hearing it more often there. If you're following weather pages or maybe space weather activity, they're starting to cover earthquake activity as well for, just for news purposes. So any time here we could see another 8-pointer. Alaska is one of them up here across this area. So we'll watch that. It is, starting to look like maybe somewhat of a swarm going on there. I think there's probably more earthquakes than what they're showing here. The seismograph network up here may be a little limited. You got to think about it. For every 5 or every 4-pointer, there should be a number of 3s and 2s and 1s out here, and there's nothing showing up. So I find that a little odd. We'll continue to keep an eye on that as it is showing some increasing earthquake activity across the states here, western United States. This earthquake here from early this morning, the Blanco fracture zone, a 3.5 again. This area had a previous earthquake up here across the region back on the 20th of 4.2. Overall, seismic activity has been somewhat increasing here across the Blanco fracture zone. This activity there in the white circles prior to that 7-pointer we had down here in the Northern California area. So what happens here in the strike slip boundary is added strain across the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone. This typical movement up here. Nothing on the Gorda Ridges yet, but we'll keep an eye on that region. But watch the Cascadia. I'm kind of thinking we'll see elevated tremor out here today. We'll have to check that a little bit later on this evening in the update. But as far as Northern California activity, 2.6 from yesterday. That's what they're stating here, but similar to Alaska up there, they're not reporting all the earthquakes that are coming in here in terms of the smaller movement. Nevada, they are. Quite a few 1s out there, as expected. Total tally here from this earthquake activity, that 5.7 that struck out here a couple weeks back, 500 earthquakes. That's including the earthquakes that they should be reporting, which are the 1s and the smaller quakes in there as well. Northern California total tally, as we zoom in here to the area, see what we got following that 7-pointer, less than 500. But I guarantee you the number is probably up around 1,000 if you were to actually include all the 1s and the earthquakes there that they skipped out on for hours at a time and not even reporting the smaller quakes. So you got to remember that just because there are not a whole lot of smaller quakes showing up on the map doesn't mean they're not happening. I've watched it myself. Many of the viewers out here seen many earthquakes coming in here to the Petrolia and the Dinsmore station, which is right here, right around this area that can pick up the earthquake activity on the seismic network. showing up, hundreds of quakes, and nothing being reported, nothing backfilling. So yeah, I don't really feel all that good about the lack of reporting out here in terms of the number of quakes. But what can we do? Just report on it here. All right, San Andreas Fault. Seeing a little bit of swarming on the creeping section here. Yeah, it's definitely right on the creeping section. Right in the middle of it, I would say. So here we have a number of quakes starting off yesterday with a 3.6. Since then, we've had some 2s and some other 3s in there, with the latest a 3.1. So things are getting active here along the creeping segment. Most of the time, we won't see a large earthquake on the creeping segment because we see these little earthquakes here as the plates here, the plate boundary, as the two plates creep past each other, they tend to produce these little earthquakes. So that means the San Andreas Fault here is on the move without producing large earthquakes and strain. The strain is built up here in the northern segment of the San Andreas Fault, and also a portion of the central section, which is going to be the Parkfield segment, and further south into the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault, where we get the big ones. But this right here telling me things are on the move. So we got to watch for some further migration here, and it looks like we're seeing a little bit of it take place here yesterday and today. The latest one a little bit further south here. Now that is getting close down here to the Parkfield section, and that area is pretty much just about ready to have a 6-pointer. On average intervals here, we should see an earthquake of magnitude 6.0 or higher about every 20 to 22 years. That's how it's been. And our last one was back in 2004, so we're at 20 years. There's always some concern here that we may see a portion of the Parkfield segment on the southern end here of that area trigger and unzip a type of pattern here that would activate the southern end of the San Andreas Fault, maybe the central and the southern end, that would create the big earthquake out here that a lot of folks are expecting. A lot of it seems like a fairy tale. Yeah, big earthquake. They keep talking about it. It's not going to happen. I see that a lot in the comments. It's crazy. One of these days, that's not going to be the case, though, folks, and then those people are going to be quiet. But that's okay. And we just got to pay attention to little patterns and whatnot. Right now, the San Andreas Fault is on the move. Got to watch that. Some activity stirring up here right on the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault here as well from yesterday. It looks like we had one more earthquake around that region this morning. But yeah, yesterday about noontime or 11 California time here, seen at 2.7. So things are on the move. And when they're on the move, well, a couple of things can happen. Nothing or something, right? There's two options. But we got to watch for these little signs here. Extreme Southern California, pretty quiet right now, but again, we're on the move here across the plate boundary. We'll watch that throughout the day today. Let's see, the rest of the area in the Intermountain West region, pretty quiet. I want to double check the Yellowstone seismograph thumbnails, and I check this because, well, a number of reasons here. It's a supervolcano for one. It's very interesting. I love the Yellowstone area, but without the traffic and the people, it's crazy. I went up here a couple years ago. I think a lot of people have gone up here in Yellowstone, right? Big tourist spot. Goodness, remind me to stay away from those areas. I love the mountains. I love the scenery. But, it's like driving in San Francisco up in the mountains. It's crazy amount of traffic out there. But it's a supervolcano, and they get these earthquake swarms out here. They get inflation, and one of these days this thing will pop too and alter the environment out here across the planet. Right now, things are quiet. Not a whole lot going on here. We really haven't had a major earthquake swarm. I'm talking about major, a couple months worth of of earthquake activity. We've seen a day, maybe a day and a half recently of just some twos and ones and whatnot, but it's been a couple years since we've had a decent amount of swarming up here. But things are quiet up there for now. Further out and about here, Texas oil fields still getting hit. Out in Louisiana as well. Another 3.1 out there around the Caddo Lake, Caddo oil field area. A lot of oil fields out here. This region has been getting hammered with some earthquake activity. Normally it's not even like that, so things are starting to fill in here across maybe some of these newer areas or away from our typical zones here across western Texas. So eventually areas that have not been hit yet will get the pressure squeezed on them and produce some earthquake activity out here. New Madrid seismic zone's been pretty active in the last 30 days. The last one here a couple days ago, 2.2. This is another area we got to watch here for some big-time earthquake activity. 1811, 1812, seen a series of large earthquakes out here, upper sevens, a number of them. And today, in that area of the country, highly populated region, that would do some damage out there. Not only locally, but at a distance as well, just due to the type of sediment and rock structure out here. You can feel these earthquakes way farther from the epicenter than what you can for California. All right, let's take a look here globally, see if we got anything else going on here overnight. Some movement there in South Africa from yesterday. Newer activity here on the globe around the Java Trench. Some 5.0 movement here working its way up the plate boundary. It's been pretty quiet here across the Andaman Sea area up along the plate boundary here, but things look like they're wanting to migrate up across that region of the Java Trench and northward. Older activity there from yesterday. That 6-pointer should be off the globe by now, and it's not. I guess that'd do it right there. Try to keep the last 24 hours of earthquake activity here on the Earthquake 3D globe. Japan awfully quiet right now. Just a mixed bag of earthquake activity globally here, so we'll have to keep a watchful, mindful eye on everything. The Atlantic Ocean is a quiet spot here today. Big Island of Hawaii, nothing major going on there. A couple earthquakes noted on the map, but really that's fairly minimal there. Not a whole lot happening across the area for now. All right, let's check out space weather activity. Expecting an active region there across the northeastern limb of the sun to come into view here in the coming days. Just barely see a little glimpse of it, looks like, on the UV filter. Some of the magnetic polarities there in the arches above that sunspot region. We'll wait for that to come into view. I think things are going to be active here as we head into next week, or this coming week. Yeah, because there's been a number of large CME eruptions here across that area of the sun. Here's one of them from yesterday, peeking out in the M7 category, but that possibly could have been stronger due to it being behind the eastern limb here, blocking out maybe the true potential of that flare that popped off there. But yeah, we'll definitely keep an eye on things as they come into view. 10% chance there for X flare. Getting a little bit of proton events there as well from that most recent eruption. Even though it was not facing Earth, the protons there can still shoot off in many different directions, and it looks as though Earth is getting some of that activity. Proton event there at about 5% chance, but as you can see, it's still lingering since yesterday. 65% chance for an M flare, C flare at 99% chance. So we'll see what takes place here. Nothing major in the aurora forecast, but that could change here in the coming weeks. As far as any major close approach asteroids there, and I know a lot of social media sites there showing that space debris re-entering the Earth's atmosphere last night. I think it was around the southern states there, Louisiana, maybe even Arkansas area, seeing some space junk or space satellites there re-entering into the Earth's atmosphere, burning up like that. And that's not a meteor. That's not an asteroid. That's more typical of something that was orbiting the planet and got re-entered into the atmosphere at that slow of a motion. An asteroid will come in just like a shooting star would, right? You know how quick they come and go? That's what a meteor or an asteroid or something of other cosmic nature would look. It'd be just a blink of an eye that quick. But these slow-moving, re-entering the atmosphere type events like we've seen last night are man-made satellites or some other type of stuff up there in the orbit where they put satellites at. Could be anything. There's so much space junk up there right now, it's unreal. Nothing major in terms of the asteroids right now. Pretty quiet. Don't want any of these coming into the planet. I mean, there's a couple big ones out here, but everything looks pretty safe in terms of distance-wise. As far as any major severe weather threats here today, very limited. Got just a little thunderstorm threat out here across the west coast. That's due to a low-pressure system about ready to come inland, provide us with some more measurable precipitation there. Northern California northward there into the Pacific Northwest. A little bit bigger system behind that. Pretty dandy of a storm there. I'm liking the winter so far. We've got a number of storm systems out here that are keeping us nice and wet. The pattern changes here, though, as we enter into early January, noticing a more north to south movement, which will bring in a lot of cold air here across a good portion of the country. Really cold air. Let's go to the thermodynamics here and see what we got as we enter into the first week of January. It's going to be a series of cold systems, it looks like, coming down. Let's see here. Texas is going to be nice and chilly. There's a blast coming right here. There it is. And that includes California out here as well. Look at that. Departure from normal. Probably a good 20 to maybe more than that. 28 degrees departure from normal. All right. And that's going to, looks like that's going to bring it all the way down south here, maybe even the Texas area eventually. This only goes to about the 7th of January. And yeah, we'll see how things play out. I mean, I'm ready for some colder air. Here's the precipitation, total accumulated precipitation run here from today to January 6th. Of course, precipitation out there across the west coast, Northern California. Snowfall, total snowfall out here. Yeah, a little bit of snow expected here across the Rockies area. Nothing major going on there across the rest of it, but you can pretty much follow the cold air pattern dipping down here across the Four Corners region eventually. But we'll see what happens. Definitely going to be a little bit chilly here as we head into the January time period. If we look at the 6 to 10 day forecast here, temperature-wise, yeah, it's a lot of above average temperatures out there across a portion of the country, as you can see. Rain across Northern California northward, below average precipitation there for Southern California for the 6 to 10 day outlook. The 8 to 14 day outlook, that's probably going to change here. This was issued, yesterday. Probably get revised. Well, it'll get revised, I feel, unless that cold air is just behind that, because this goes out into about the January 4th time period. Still showing a lot of above average temperatures. So I guess we'll see what happens as we enter into the new year. 2025 is coming up. I can't believe it. That's crazy. I'm gonna have to get used to it. I'm sure there'll be a few mistakes there. I don't know how many I made this year in terms of the date out here, but 2025, that seems like an easy number to remember. All right, folks, stay safe out there. We'll catch you guys out here a little bit later on this evening. Enjoy the rest of your weekend here. Seismograph stations looking all pretty quiet across the board, but keep an eye on a couple areas up here across Alaska, and we'll check out the Trimmer map a little bit later tonight, see if things have increased here across the southern end of the Cascadia, and we'll just go from there. Have a good one. See you guys back out here a little bit later this evening.